There we have the smoke from the Sistine Chapel, and you can hear from the roars of the crowd in the Piazza of St. Peter's that it's white. It's unequivocally white.
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum, habemus papa.
Coming in. To you first of all, Father Stephen, what was your reaction when you heard the news this morning?
Well, it was just a huge shock. I got a text when I was having a coffee with someone this morning and I couldn't quite believe it. And I think that's the feeling throughout the Catholic world and the Catholics that I've met today. But on the other hand, I think we will look back at this and think it does make sense of the man, because he's always someone who has done what he believes is right. He's someone who's always acted with integrity, and in his heart has been a desire to serve the church, to serve others. So there's a sort of paradox here that if he feels he can best serve the church by stepping aside, that fits with what we know of this man.
Following Pope Benedict XVI's decision to resign, the question on many people's minds is who will be the Catholic Church's next spiritual leader. Peter Smith from Catholic Voices believes a pope from a developing country would be welcome.
Cardinal Peter Turkson in Ghana and Francis Arinze in Nigeria, and both were prelates with an awful lot of experience. And that would be fantastic. The African Catholic Church, I think, is the fastest growing in the world. Certainly Latin America is growing too, and Asia, but Africa, to see somebody come from from that continent would be fantastic. If anything, the signals and messages it says out about black people's place within hierarchies and power positions, it's a great equaliser. It shows that it's a great attack on racism as well, on racial difference. So yeah, I think it'd be brilliant. I think, to do that.
And on the matter of conservatism versus reforming, would you like to see a pope taking a different direction on any of the issues that have been key issues, not just for this pope but for previous ones? I suppose notably if we're talking about Africa, you think of contraception.
One of the I think special things about the position of the Pope is that it's the continuity, and so I expect that the new Pope will continue to build upon the work that Pope Benedict has been doing, just as Pope Benedict continued to build upon the work that Pope John Paul II has been doing. And so while a new Pope will bring in new talents and new gifts, I think that they will continue to build upon the work that Pope Benedict has been doing, which is in terms of Africa and the issues that concern Africa. It is reminding the world that we need to focus at the issues and provide solutions that address them rather than imposing Western solutions. So thinking critically about solutions that address Africa's
Latin America.
problems.
Let's get reaction from Europe now. In the studio with us is Peter Williams from the advocacy group Catholic Voices. Thank you so much for joining us. So when you first heard that he had resigned, which is quite uncommon for a pope, certainly living memory, how did you feel and what kind of reaction have you had from fellow Catholics in the UK?
Well, my reaction was the same as theirs, which was shock. I think a lot of them have felt a certain amount of dismay as well, because this was a pope that many of us love very deeply, and so consequently to lose him in a sense will be quite a jar. We don't know what's coming next. We trust the Holy Spirit that the Holy Spirit will give us a wonderful next pope, but it is very sad to see him go. This was such an amazing man and who did such wonderful works for the church.
Absolutely not. What the church does at the moment, it doesn't allow priests who are already ordained to get married, but what it does do is recognise that men who are already married and who have had ministry in another Christian denomination weren't actually brought up in a tradition whereby they had to choose between marriage and the priesthood, so they have a dual vocation.
We're joined by Jack Valero from Catholic Voices. Jack Valero, a very good afternoon to you.
Hello.
What did you make of what the Pope had to say in this general audience today? Some people remarking on the tone.
Yes, it was an incredibly moving occasion. The last audience of of the Pope, this has never happened before. A friend of mine who went to the square said it was so packed where he was, it was difficult even to clap. But, you know, he gave us so many analogies about the church, saying that it wasn't just an organization, but a family. And he talked about his own role, which wouldn't be a private role like he had before as Cardinal Ratzinger, like as if he, you know, as the retired Archbishop of Canterbury, talking about different things and giving opinions. He would retire to the monastery. And then he talked very movingly about the many people that had written to him, of all kinds, even ordinary people, many ordinary people who'd written to him, and not with any funny or good language, but just in their normal way, written to him to thank him, and he was really grateful for this.
General Riley, I mean, it does seem to me that there does seem to be quite a lot of unhappiness in congregations in Europe and America about the direction of the church, and will I be right in saying that what you'd hope is that a pope will be chosen who can deal with that?
I think Catholics around the world are keen to see three things. They're keen to see a pope who can come in and get a firm grip on the clerical sex abuse crisis, deal with that and sort out the curia, and that's going to require an awful lot of hard work. They're also keen to see someone who can come in and who can really bring a global vision to the role, who can look at all the different challenges in the Northern Hemisphere, which is post-Christian and secular, and the Southern Hemisphere and East and West, which are exploding and have all sorts of social issues. But more than anything else, they want a man who is a missionary, who is an effective communicator, who can actually communicate the gospel truths in ways that are clear, accessible and relevant to the challenges we all face today, because the church has got a lot to say. It's not done a great job in making its voice heard there.
Now, watching all of this with me here in our live position overlooking St. Peter's Square, I'm joined by Monsignor Mark Langham from the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity, and Austin Ivory, founder of Catholic Voices. And delighted to have you both with us. This is quite a moment, isn't it?
I think the thing about this also is that, of course, it's a very, very old institution, the conclave. It goes back, you know, about 1,000 years. But that doesn't mean that it's somehow fossilized. It's always changing, it's always being modified, and it's always being updated. And in fact, even Benedict XVI, before he stood down, made a few modifications, for example, allowing the cardinals to choose the date of the conclave. Now we're getting it televised, and I think it's the same thing, but it keeps evolving according to the time.
Well, there we have the smoke from the Sistine Chapel, and you can hear from the roars of the crowd in the Piazza of St. Peter's that it's white. It's unequivocally white.
Now, he joins us from Catholic Voices. We'll get back to Catherine in just a few minutes' time. William, thank you very much for talking to Channel 5 News tonight. A very important day for you and history in the making.
Absolutely. It's an important day for the whole Catholic world, and I think there's a great sense of excitement and anticipation, and we just don't know who's going to come out on that balcony.
Do you have an idea? Who do you think it might be?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, it's anybody's guess. We're a worldwide church, and the next pope could come from anywhere in the world, so it's a really exciting moment, and one that we've been waiting for the last few days and weeks.
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum, habemus papam. Eminentissimum ac reverentissimum Dominum Georgium Marium, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae Cardinalem Bergoglio.
Fratelli e sorelle, buonasera.
And he's made it to the front of a lot of tomorrow morning's newspapers. There's the Telegraph's front page. Pope Francis the Humble is how they headline it, with a picture of him smiling to the crowds down in St. Peter's Square. What do you make of this appointment, Father Paul?
Well, it's a great headline in the Daily Telegraph, and it seems to be true when he came out with that Buonasera, and his whole manner, just really wanting to be intimate with the people he was talking to down in that square, and such a young audience looking back up at this man. But it's been a night of surprises. We weren't expecting someone to be chosen today because we thought there were no front runners, so it would take longer. It's our first pope for more than 1,300 years from outside Europe. He's taken a name that no other pope has ever taken before and associated himself with this great saint of living out poverty with the poor whilst evangelising.
Let's talk about women in the church. Mary Clarkson, if I may, because to a lot of people in the West now who are so used to the empowerment of women, seeing the conclave, it would have looked to some people like a kind of convention of ayatollahs.
Oh.
Men.
I think,
old
okay.
men.
Do you know what? For most women in the Catholic Church, the place where the faith is most alive is in the parishes. And if you look around the church, you will see women working in schools, women educating their children in the faith.
Shouldn't
the
have real
vibrancy-
power in the parishes. Shouldn't they be priests? Shouldn't they be bishops?
Do you know, very few women I come across all kinds of women in powerful positions in the secular world. Very few women I come across say, oh, I wish I could be a priest. Now, I understand that...
Is it a surprise to you that someone who is pushing against that tradition and clearly trying to be his own man while still being the Holy Father is being so broadly welcomed?
Yeah, I think he's not against tradition. The Catholic Church, as you say, is all about tradition. He will be in many ways a traditional pope. He'll carry on and pass on the teaching of the church. But, you know, the church is, I suppose things don't really change in the church, as what happens is we recover elements that had been lost. And I think particularly in the last few years, there's been a kind of, the Vatican's felt a bit adrift. It's got more fussy, more fusty, the liturgies have got more sort of complex. And of course we've had a number of evidences of dysfunction in the Curia, the VatiLeaks scandal and so on. All of which suggests an organisation which has sort of lost touch a little bit, I mean here in the Vatican, I mean, with its central purpose, which is its mission, which is to communicate Christ. So it feels at the moment like, you know, a lot of that's being swept away. Look, just to give you a little example, you know, he went out of the Vatican the other day, impromptu, to make a visit to an elderly cardinal in a hospital. You know, the security detail went in 2 BMWs, he went in a simple Volkswagen. You know, he's a man who wants simplicity because that's all he needs, and he believes that that's what's the best way of communicating the gospel. So I think we're going to see a lot of, not sort of substantial changes in doctrine or teaching, it's more the style and the warmth and the approach of the papacy. It's going to be a much more direct and much more